This is the Gunpowder Plot by Lucas, Aiden, and Dorio.
Hello class, I'm Miss Nardi. I'm here to take you back to a darker time where there was always some sort of mischievous plan in the works in England. First, let me introduce you to King James I. He was king from 1603 to 1625, and while he was ruling, he was very biased towards Anglicans. So in turn, he was biased against the Catholic Church. This all started after he introduced fines for anyone who refused to attend Anglican services and expelled a lot of priests and Jesuits. This, of course, angered Robert Catesby, who was the first father of this plan in May of 1603, and his four co-conspirators, Thomas Winter, Thomas Percy, John Wright, and Guy Fawkes, who all officially came together as a group in January of 1604. They first all met up in a house behind the St. Clement's Church. These five ended up coming up with a pretty clever plan. They would assassinate King James I by blowing up the House of Parliament while they were having Parliament. Over the next year, they recruited Robert Winter, who was a brother of Thomas Winter, John Grant, Ambrose Rokewood, Robert Keyes, Sir Everard Digby, Francis Tresham, and Thomas Bates. First, step 1 was to rent a house right next to the House of Lords, where the Parliament will be taking place. They achieved this step on May 24th, 1604. Step 2 was to dig a mine under the House of Parliament, which they started to dig on December 11th, 1604, and got about halfway through in March of that year, where they found a vault directly underneath the House of Parliament, which was very beneficial for them. Step 3 was to pack 36 barrels of gunpowder, which is 1.5 tons, which weighs more than a horse, directly underneath the House of Parliament. Then step 4 was to conceal the gunpowder with coal and firewood. All of the preparations were finished in May of 1605, and they were planning for the explosion to happen on November 5th of that same year. However, one difficulty they were facing at the time was that they weren't only going to blow up King James I, they were sadly also putting fellow Roman Catholics and lords in harm's way as well, one of which was Francis Tresham's brother-in-law, Monteagle. Even though Catesby put in place a rule that no one may speak of this, Tresham decided to send an anonymous letter, like that would help, to Monteagle, warning him to not attend the meeting on November 5th. The letter read this:
My lord, out of the love I bear to some of your friends, I have a care of your preservation. Therefore I would advise you, as you tender your life, to devise some excuse to shift your attendance at this Parliament, for God and man have concurred to punish the wickedness of this time. And think not slightly of this advertisement, but retire yourself into your country, where you may expect the event in safety. For though there be no appearance of any stir, yet I say they shall receive a terrible blow this Parliament, and yet they shall not see who hurts them. This counsel is not to be condemned, because it may do you good, and can do you no harm. For the danger is past as soon as you have burnt the letter, and I hope God will give you the grace to make good use of it, to whose holy protection I commend you.
Thank you, Mr. Cap. As you can imagine, it didn't take long for Monteagle to decipher that something would happen on that day, and decided to discuss the next course of action with a group of ministers in Whitehall. It was decided to investigate the cellar underneath the House of Lords right before the meeting to find whatever might be happening, already working in full swing. On October 27th, Thomas Ward, who was Monteagle's servant and a friend of Thomas Winter, warned Thomas Winter that their plot was known. The next day, Thomas Winter begged Catesby to stop the plot. However, after speaking to Fawkes, Catesby decided to stand strong and continue with the plot. On the night of November 4th, the night before the planned explosion, a search was done of the cellar underneath the House of Lords, and that's when they found Guy Fawkes guarding the gunpowder. They arrested him on the spot. They tortured him until he revealed who his co-conspirators were on November 9th. That's 5 days of torture. But you would think that the other conspirators would be found after this confession. However, they were actually fatally found before. On November 8th, at 11 a.m., the sheriff and his men started shooting into the house where most of the conspirators were staying. Catesby, Percy, and Wright were killed right away. Winter and Rokewood were wounded and taken prisoner. The two Winters, Digby, Fawkes, Rokewood, Keyes, and Bates were all executed, while Tresham died in the Tower of London. But one good thing that came out of this whole situation is that in January of 1606, the Parliament initiated Guy Fawkes Day, which takes place on November 5th, when the explosion was supposed to happen. It is filled with parades, fireworks, bonfires, and food. People usually walk through the streets with straw men that represent Guy Fawkes, while usually chanting,
Remember, remember the 5th of November, gunpowder treason and plot. We see no reason why gunpowder treason should ever be forgot.
Thank you, Dr. Mule. Fireworks are also a very major component of the celebration. They're used to represent the failed plot that took place on this day and the supposed boom boom. This is one of the most well-known failed plots in UK history, and it will continue to be well known due to the presence of the holiday that they celebrate annually.
Thank you for listening, and I hope that you had more fun listening to this than we had making this, because it was not fun at all.